Hey there. So I was talking to someone I work with today, and she was asking me, she actually sent me a message, and she gave me permission to use it here in a video because I think it could help some of you too. So she was asking me today, how come he was such a great husband until I lost my job? How come I couldn't see it? How come I still miss him sometimes? Well, then she told me she'd been looking through some of the messages that he had sent and some of the Facebook memories that had been popping up. And she was like, you know what? It seemed like I spoke so highly of him back then, and I thought things were good. How come things seemed good when they weren't? And why do I still miss him, even though I don't actually want to be with him? Now, in her particular story, there's been a tremendous amount of unfaithfulness and infidelity and addiction and abuse in a number of different ways. And her kids are caught in the crossfire, and there's just so much going on. And she knows it was a toxic situation. She knows that it was not something that was honoring God. She knows that she has every reason to be away and safe and on her own with her boys. But there's still that tug. There's still that sense of longing sometimes, once in a while. And here's what I told her. You see, when you're longing for that, you're not actually missing him. Because he wasn't a great husband back then when he was cheating on you and you just hadn't found out yet. He wasn't a great husband back then when from the beginning he would say, well, then let's just get a divorce if you don't want to do what I want. He wasn't a safe person back then. He was just a really great deceiver. And you didn't yet have the data to know what you were dealing with. You didn't have the information to be able to pull back and see the pattern. So at first, you may have been blind to what others could see, or maybe he was so charming others couldn't see it yet either. And you played your role without question. So of course, at first, he seemed like a great spouse because you weren't bucking any of the control. You were actually maybe handing over the control voluntarily and surrendering yourself to being controlled because you thought it was either the right thing to do, or it suited your personality, or you thought it was how marriage was supposed to be, or you just trusted so fully that you didn't know yet that maybe you should have been doubting or checking or asking questions. He seemed awesome back then, those times that were really good, because he was able to lie really well and you didn't know not to believe it yet. You didn't have the data to pierce the veil of deception. And so, maybe the whole time you thought it was a democracy. Maybe the whole time you didn't realize that it was this top-down hierarchy where you were actually just playing a part. And so he didn't push back and he didn't get explosive yet because you weren't unwilling to be controlled yet. You hadn't seen through the darkness yet. But what if it was actually more like this top-down hierarchy? And what if at some point, when you realized that you were not a partner but a pawn, it all changed? And then when you started to see things, you thought, but isn't he just a flawed human being? Isn't that just what happens? Aren't we supposed to be there for each other? And the answer is yes. Flawed human beings are supposed to be there for each other. We're supposed to encourage each other. We're supposed to uplift each other. We're supposed to stick together. But what if it wasn't just a human flaw issue? What if when you were giving your unwavering sense of loyalty and obligation and fidelity and duty, you were actually being drawn further into a cycle, a systemic pattern of exploitation and abuse, emotionally, physically, sexually, faithfully, all of the things. And now you can see it clearly, right? Now you see what you couldn't see then, or maybe now you're in the process of just waking up to it, and you're beginning to understand that there were these patterns and these systems, and there were these things that would just happen over and over again, and that it was bigger than just a flawed human being. And yet there's this tiny piece of you that still misses him, that misses the companionship, that misses the good times, because the good times were the cocaine, right? The good times were the crack that got you hooked on the good stuff so that you would do backflips. You would do anything. You would erase yourself to get the good stuff back. But you don't miss him. You miss the mirage. You miss the illusion of the perfect relationship that you thought it was. Now, maybe you look at it and you can see that he's empty and completely self-consumed and miserable and happy to make everyone else miserable and power hungry and hollow. And maybe you've even seen his eyes glaze over and go dark and soulless, and you've had this chill like you are looking into the face of evil itself, and you still sometimes wonder if it wasn't your fault, or if you could have done something to fix it, or if you had just tried a little harder, would it have changed? And you're not missing him. You're missing the magic show. You're missing the smoke and mirrors. You're missing what you thought you had when you believed that he was a safe person, when you believed that what he offered was love instead of consuming. What you miss isn't the real man himself. You miss the beautiful idea of what you thought he was. But he was never that man. So there's honestly, when you're missing the mirage, the way forward is to realize and accept and embrace the fact that there was nothing ever real there to miss. If you can relate to this, if this resonates with you, if this reminds you of someone that you know or someone else needs it, please share this. Drop me a comment, send me a message. Check out the free resources and the coaching and the ebooks and everything that's available at www.wilderness2wild.com. And if you like videos like this, you can check them all out on Facebook. You can send me messages or ask more information, but you can also check out more than 300 videos, I think. We got close to that on YouTube at youtube.com/Sarah McDugal. I love to hear from you. I want to know what's on your heart. I want to know how we can help support. And, I see a comment. I'm just going to answer this right here. Is there something wrong with you? You don't miss him at all? No, girl. That does not mean that there is something wrong with you. It just means that you figured out that you don't need to long for the mirage. And that's okay too. It means you're healing. All right. Share it. Love it. Send something to me underneath. And I'll talk to you next time. In the meantime, be safe and live wild. Don't get stuck in the wilderness.